The former homicide investigator with the Toronto Police Service. He is now CEO of the promotions company Investigative Solutions Network. He joins us now in Toronto. David, based on what you're learning, what is your sense? What sparked this?
What sparks this kind of violence on a regular basis is hard for us to comprehend. It could be anything from a look, a glance, a dispute. If you insult somebody or disrespect them in some way in these gangs, their automatic reaction is violence, and they'll obviously take it to any level, including what we saw last night. So to put any sense, difficult, I think, for any of us to do.
So are you saying it's very difficult to put a rational explanation to an irrational act?
Absolutely. And as an investigator, I've been to way too many scenes similar to this, obviously not with a number of people, but you know, where you've got a peaceful barbecue or some other kind of an event going on, and all of a sudden words are spoken, and within a split second guns are out and people are shooting and people are dying. And it's not the first time we've seen this in this city, and it's certainly not going to be the last time. We've got a very serious problem. And it's time, I think, for all of us to think about the City of Toronto as not protecting its reputation any longer, but actually protecting the citizens instead. And we need some action.
On that note, Toronto's new head of community housing, Gene Jones, former chief of public housing for the City of Detroit, got himself into a little bit of trouble today by comparing Toronto with Detroit. Mayor Ford denying Toronto's problems are anything like Detroit's problems, but based on your experience, are we heading that way?
Well, we'd be foolish not to compare, because as we learn about future behavior from past behavior, and crime trends tend to follow patterns that we see in the United States. Sometimes we're 20 years behind those trends, and other times a mere few months or a few years behind. What's happening in major centers in the United States is now starting to happen here on a way too frequent basis, and if we don't learn from it and perhaps look at more preventative steps, and I think that would be a really poor approach to take.
You say we're dealing with a brand new form of criminal in Toronto.
Absolutely. I have a young, cold-hearted gang population that are armed to the teeth, and the most frightening part is they're very willing to use their firearms, and indiscriminately. They don't care about you, they don't care about me or anybody that gets in their way. If they see an intended target, that's all they see, and they start firing. And you know, we saw it in this tragic incident last night, we saw it at the Eaton Centre recently, and we've seen it in other public areas. And I think we need to pay attention to the trend and or the pattern that we're starting to see, and try and figure out if there's something more behind this other than just the indiscriminate violence. Is this a new way of you know, engaging in some kind of gang activity where instead of settling your beef in an alleyway late at night where things used to happen, that they're doing it in a very public way, and they're making sure that there are other victims involved. And
sending a message at the same time. But
the
accessibility of guns that people talk of, the U.S. Constitution guarantees citizens the right to keep and bear arms. I know in my 16 years in the United States, it was often seen as both a blessing and a hurdle to curing the kind of event that we saw here last night in Toronto. Why do we, when we do not have a Second Amendment here in Canada, have such a difficult time, it seems, getting rid of guns?
Well, it's the illegal guns that are causing us most of the issues. I mean, from time to time there are issues with people who have properly registered firearms in their home, and typically in domestic violence and things like that. But what's happening on the street is completely different, and really is not impacted by any law. It doesn't matter. These people, gangs, are lawless. They don't care. And the ease of access to weapons in this city today compared to when I joined the police service in 1976 it's horrifying. Anybody can get a gun. They're cheap. They're readily available, and the flow of them coming up from the United States is just like drugs and every other criminal activity. It's big money, it's power, and in the gang culture that means everything. And as long as we have gangs around, there will be guns.
David, I hope we get an opportunity to speak again about what can be done, in your view, to correct the situation. In the meantime, David Perry, former homicide investigator with the Toronto Police Service, now CEO of the private investigations company Investigative Solutions Network. David, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.